Welcome, everyone. My name is Nina Benoit, and I'm the Director of Sustainability at Brightest and host of the AI Sustainability podcast. For first-time listeners, this podcast talks about all things related to artificial intelligence and sustainability, exploring how AI can have a positive impact on our planet and our people, but also what are the potential limitations or risks that we need to be aware of. Today, I am so excited to welcome Professor Shaolei Ren, Associate Professor at the University of California, Riverside, and co-author of the groundbreaking research Making AI Less Thirsty. His research has fundamentally changed how we think about AI's environmental impacts, revealing the massive hidden water consumption of AI systems, something that has been largely kept secret by the industry. So, Professor Ren, thank you so much for joining us today. It really is an honor. It's really a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I've read your research multiple times. So it is an honor to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Great to be here.
So starting with the first question, so you've made a career studying the intersection of AI and sustainability. Could you briefly walk us through your background and what led you to focus specifically on AI's water footprint?
Sure. So I would say I didn't really start my career working on the intersection between AI and water. I had a background in electrical and computer engineering. More specifically, I work on optimizing the resource management for network systems, like wireless network. And after getting my PhD degree from UCLA, I started working on resource management for data centers, like server scheduling. That's something that I still work on today. So about 2012 or 2013, at that time, a lot of people were working on energy efficient cloud computing. There was also some research on reducing the carbon footprint for data centers. And I was also interested in these environmental impacts of data centers. And I realized that water is one of the other important aspects that had not been studied very well. So I tried to do some literature survey, but I couldn't find much research. I found some information, but not so much. So then I wrote a paper about how we can maybe using the data center flexibility, like you can shift your workloads from place A to place B to exploit these different water intensities in different places. In this way, you can potentially reduce the overall water footprint of these data center facilities. So then that's basically the time when I published my first paper on data center water. And then between 2014 and 2023, for these 9 years, I published some paper related to water. Most of my research is not really about water. As I said, I work on this optimizing the computer systems and developing some fundamental algorithms. But then in 2023, there seems to be a lot of interest in AI, firstly, and also we've seen studies on AI energy and some groundbreaking research related to the carbon footprint of AI. And then I realized that it might be another chance for me to look at come back to my research interest many years ago. So I look at this water footprint, and I didn't really expect this to be receiving so much attention because, more than 10 years ago, I published this water data centers, but very few people read it. But this time, apparently, it is very different.
And I can imagine it's very rewarding as a researcher when you see that people read your research and also it's covered in the news. That must be a very nice feeling, right?
Well, in general, I would say I'm happy. Honestly, I'm happy that people are paying more attention to this issue. But I also understand that people pay attention to this issue not purely because of water, it's because of AI. I studied this water for general data centers, but I shouldn't say nobody, but most people don't really pay much attention to this. So this year, in these days, people just care about everything related to AI, and that's why they pay attention to this AI water. But still, I think it's somehow raises the awareness of these environmental impacts among the public so that we can better support this technology more responsibly and potentially our algorithmic work can be applied.
Absolutely. And it's definitely very positive that AI and the hype around AI can have this impact and this effect on the research that you're doing, right? And so your research revealed that global AI could account for up to 6.6 billion cubic meters of water withdrawal by 2027.
Mhm.
Can you help our listeners understand why does AI need so much water to function?
Sure. So when we talk about AI water, there are generally two parts. And the first part is a direct water consumption or direct water usage. It's for cooling the data center facilities because these servers use a lot of energy. They produce a lot of heat, and we just have to get rid of the heat to make sure the servers are working properly. There are different ways to cool down the data center facilities. You can use outside air if it's cold outside, or you can use water evaporation. And there are other ways to cool the system as well, like these hybrid approaches. But in general, let's look at either air cooled or water cooled. And water cooled is typically more energy efficient. If you look at some of the statistics from those tech companies, they show using water evaporation to cool the system consume 10% less energy than a typical air cooled system. 10% energy saving means 10% energy cost and 10% energy, carbon saving, and also saves some other resources related to generating electricity, which I'm going to be talking about next. So this is the direct water consumption, and the water is essentially evaporated into the atmosphere. That's considered as water consumption. The second part of how AI uses water is the indirect water consumption. And this part is often more dominant. So when we generate electricity, we, especially for those coal-based power, natural gas fire power plants, nuclear power plants, and also hydropower, although hydropower is a bit controversial, but I've seen a lot of literature that includes hydropower into the water footprint for electricity. So this generating electricity overall consumes a lot of water and withdraws a lot of water as well. Withdrawal is just taking the water from some sources. So this is the indirect water consumption, the indirect water usage. It's more, if you look at the overall water footprint for AI, it's not talk about the supply chain. That's another completely different issue. So it'd be just between the on-site cooling and off-site electricity electricity generation part is taking up more than 80% or even 90% of the overall water footprint. So the on-site water is a small part, but it doesn't mean it's not important, because the on-site water is oftentimes the potable water, is the water coming from the public water systems. And the off-site water for generating electricity is mostly not potable, it's non-potable. It's taking the water from some rivers, from lakes, or some even seawater in some cases. So if you add these numbers together, that's something we call total water footprint or total water consumption. Again, we're not talking about the supply chain. That's different. Then let's come to the 4 to 6 billion liters of water in 2027. This number includes both the direct water withdrawal and indirect water withdrawal. By the way, that number is for water withdrawal. It's not for water consumption. Water consumption is roughly 10% of that number.
Yeah.
So in our paper, we include both. So out of this 4 billion liters of water withdrawal is, if I remember correctly, of course, I couldn't remember the exact number, but it's almost entirely for generating electricity, the 4 billion numbers. A smaller fraction is for the on-site cooling. And this is how we calculate the overall impact of something on the water resources. So this is how the number is calculated. And this is the standard methodology that people follow in this field to estimate the water impact. And they look at both water withdrawal and water consumption. Water consumption is a small part because not all the water withdrawal is evaporated.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for explaining this more in details, because a lot of people are not aware of this still. So I think it's
right, because they only look at this overall number. They are not digging into the details, and they might be thinking all this in the water is for cooling the data center facilities. That's not the real information in the paper. And in our full paper with the appendix, all the tech calculation details, all the parameters are provided in the paper.
Thank you so much for sharing more. about that. And so you mentioned the use of salt water, and some people often ask, okay, so you need to use a lot of potable water, like you said, very clean water. But we have so much salt water available on Earth. Why don't we use that to power data centers? And do you have any thoughts on that?
So technically, I should say some data centers are using seawater for cooling. But that's a very different type of cooling system. First, they have to be located next to the seawater, and they're using something called once through. It's not the typical evaporator cooling system we're talking about. Ignore those a few exceptions and just look at the general industry. Then, if they're using some cooling towers, they're using potable water. The reason is this water is getting evaporated. Some of the water is circulating through the pipes. So we want to avoid those corrosion, those cloggage. And so potable water is we don't, technically we don't have to use potable water. We need clean enough water. And the easiest way for a data center facility to get this clean water is just connect your facility to the public water supply. And they are supplying potable water in many cases. But at the same time, we're also seeing some uptick in getting recycled water, getting reclaimed water from these municipal water systems for data centers, especially in Europe and parts of the US. I think Europe is in a leading position in terms of using recycled water.
And that's definitely a very smart solution to tackle this, as a lot of data centers are in water drought areas, right?
This practice is more effective for reducing the pressure on the local public water infrastructure because water infrastructure needs to be able to supply the satisfy the demand at all times. So essentially, if somebody takes a large chunk of water, even during one day of the year, that could be a problem because everybody needs water at all times and not. So that's essentially it could be a big problem in some places, especially those smaller public water systems.
Absolutely. And especially if it's in a very dry area, right, that already doesn't have
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
water.
yeah. So we've seen some cases that the data center in that municipal takes up more than 30% of their overall water supplies, and in those cases, it could be a problem. But nationally or even at the state level, the data center is not using that much water, even from the public water systems. The reason is, data centers are not everywhere. Most towns in the US, I think in Europe as well, don't have data centers. So their water is not really taken away by the data centers. But if you look at certain regions, certain communities, the things could be very different.
Like the example of Virginia, correct? In the United States.
I think in Virginia, the problem is more for the power strain because according to some white paper by EPRI, more than 25% of the state's electricity is provided to data centers. And during the summertime, there could be some peak issue and data center can strain the infrastructure for the power. For water, I don't have any data for specific towns. But overall, for the whole state, data center is not using that much water directly. But according to the New York Times, in Newton County, Georgia, some new data centers are asking for several million gallons of water each day. And that's, according to the report, is more than the entire county's daily usage. So that could be a problem. And the local municipal either has to upgrade the water infrastructure or unfortunately reject the cooling system design in the current form.
So really the evolution of how much data we're storing and the evolution of data center is becoming an issue at this point.
Yes. So as I explained earlier, we have direct water and indirect water usage by data centers, and they need different solutions as well, and they have different impacts. One is more on the public water, potable water resources. The other one is more on the local water resources. So if we try to address the public water systems, we can use different cooling systems. You can use something called dry coolers, zero water consumption on site. This type of cooling system doesn't evaporate water directly, but as explained, it could be generally consuming more energy, and then there could be more indirect water consumption. But that's another issue. To address the indirect water, we're going to be needing more holistic approaches. For example, integrating more water efficient electricity sources into the grid, like solar and wind. Um, that's a different, so essentially that requires different strategies. By
Absolutely.
the way, another simple solution for the on-site water system is simply use a water tank. So you don't have to draw a lot of water during the summer times when other people are also needing water most. Instead, you just draw a small stream of water constantly, continuously, and store them in your water tank. And when you need it, when you use it, just tap into the water tank. So that could be, it's similar to the energy storage for the electricity.
And so looking ahead, what advice would you give to any companies that are looking to reduce their water footprint? And how do you think we could tackle this problem?
Yeah, for direct water, it said you could use uh, dry coolers. That's one option. Or if the local municipals has enough water resources, has enough infrastructure to support the water needs, using water is not necessarily a bad idea because it can save your energy, save the carbon, save the indirect water usage, and overall the water impact will be even less than using dry coolers. But the prerequisite is you need to make sure this data center that the center's water needs is not putting much pressure on the local water infrastructure, and it's not increasing the utility rates for the local residents. And I think if these conditions are met, using water evaporative cooling is not necessarily bad due to the benefits in other aspects like the energy saving, carbon saving, and indirect water saving.
Absolutely. And I think the solutions you mentioned before, like using reclaimed water, right, and recycling water.
Yeah, that's another option. Yeah.
Mhm.
And also to reduce the pressure on the water infrastructure during the summertime, you can have a simple water tank. That's an easy solution. And also, we've seen some cases where data centers are harvesting the water, the rainwater. So that's another simple solution you can tap into.
Definitely a lot of circular, very smart ideas that we can implement to make the process more sustainable. So, Professor Ren, thank you so much for sharing all of these insights and your expertise. I'm so happy you could join us today and share more about your research and the water footprint that AI is already generating at the moment and how it is increasing right now. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thanks for having me.
And so, to everyone listening, if you found this episode valuable, please share it with someone that you think might love it too. You can connect with me or with Professor Ren on LinkedIn if you would like, and follow our work on AI and Systemity. My name is Nina Benoit, and this is the AI Systemity podcast. See you next time.